RCA 103G Lime AM radio. Forget what year, some late 70s, I think. I got it on eBay. Have no idea about its functionality. It has silicon transistors, so that's why I just chose this one to fix next, because I'm much more comfortable with the silicon stuff, and I have silicon transistors laying around, tons of different ones, so I feel like that would help me a little. And I believe I found a schematic for this online, which would be really great, seeing as how I am not too skilled at this. I'm just kind of guessing as I go, basically. I've got it got it hooked to my voltmeter here to measure the current, and I have not powered it on yet, so I'm going to power it on, and we'll just, my main concern at first anyways is making sure the current draw is not too high. Well, that's encouraging. Yeah, we're not drawing much current. Actually, we are drawing a lot of current. 500 milliamps. I hope that's not. Something's got to be getting hot if that's the case. Is this thing? Yeah, I don't see. There's no decimal. That's very impossible. I don't know. Yeah, 0.077 amps, which would be, was that about 8 milliamps? No, 11 milliamps. I don't know. The scaling on this thing is kind of funny, I guess. It seems like sometimes it doesn't want to throw that decimal in there. So yeah, that seems like an acceptable current draw. Maybe this thing works. What a bummer that would be. Volume is really weak.
The job's done. That comes from a survey of American businesses asking about their payroll. Likes to pound the football. We saw the Marshall.
It doesn't want to pick up anything super clear. Well, so I noticed a couple of things. For one thing, this radio doesn't not have any. Usually there'll be two audio transformers. Doesn't have an audio transformer. Has a 60 ohm speaker. And I was thinking about this, and I remember Shango 66 actually fixed one of these. So I'm going to maybe go watch that video and see if I can get any hints. But I don't think this one has anything too serious wrong with it. You'll have to bear with me. This is a little bit tricky to do under the camera. So I jumped every capacitor basically to try to find which one was the worst. And
Lance, this is the first show we've done together here
I think
on
that's our winner.
Radio, and as you will find... how well we do in the midterm elections.
And it actually sounds pretty good like that. So another thing I found kind of odd, and I don't, just because I haven't worked on enough of these, I don't really know, but some of these solder joints are really shiny. They don't look very oxidized at all. So I wonder if someone's worked on it before, but at the same time, I mean, these parts all look original to me. So I don't know. Maybe someone just reflowed some of the solder joints. I don't know. I don't think they've ever changed the capacitors. So I'm going to pull this big one here, because I think that's most of our problem, and that must be the audio decoupling capacitor. I guess it's near the audio output, so I don't know how it's connected. I guess I need to look at that just out of curiosity. I tried jumping these up near the volume control because I thought one of those would be the AVC circuit, but didn't. Either I didn't hit the right one, or it just they're not really that bad. The AVC does seem to be working, because when you turn the volume up and down, you get a big difference, at least when you jump this big one. So I think I'll just replace this one, and that way I don't screw any. If I screw something up, I'll know where I screwed it up at. So I think I'll replace this one, and maybe even that one while I'm there. See how the radio performs, and then I'll come back and replace a couple of more. I don't know. I just like to kind of prove that they're bad, or like to know why they're causing a problem before I just yank them out. I mean, obviously this thing's 50 years old. The capacitors are definitely bad in it. Got those two capacitors replaced. These two, this was the one that was the worst. And according to the schematic, this is an audio output capacitor. And I guess that makes sense, but this turned out to be a nightmare to replace, because all the power and speaker wires were down here in this area. I ended up putting a new battery clip on it because the old one was just kind of falling apart. And I got really confused. I always take a picture before I do any solder, and I took pictures, but there was a knot that they tied here as strain relief in the factory on the other side of this. I don't know what you call this, some kind of insulation on this jumper goes from a ceramic to this stuff. Well, it was covering up what I needed to see, and I couldn't imagine that the speaker would be connected directly to DC voltage. Just doesn't make sense to me. The schematic doesn't show that. And so I sat for an hour trying to figure out how the hot wire was supposed to be connected, and second guessing, even though I could see in the photo that it really was connected to the same trace that this white wire that I replaced for the speaker is connected to. And that Again, that just doesn't make any sense to me. But that's how it's supposed to be connected. When I redid it just for safety purposes, I hooked up this grain of wheat bulb just to make sure that it wasn't hooked up too bad and wrong. But anyway, that was a that was a struggle. But and one of the traces lifted where this bundle here is, where this that red looking again insulation stuff. It comes to one of the positive leads of the capacitors that I replaced, and it was kind of a small trace anyway, but the thing just lifted right off. What a pain. I haven't had that happen so far. Never had a trace lift on one of these, but these definitely seem more delicate. So I guess you have to be very careful. I had my iron on 350, so it wasn't like excessively hot or anything. But audio sounds pretty good now, but we're getting some oscillations in the audio circuit in different parts of the band. You can hear some of that. Selectivity seems to be really good. But yeah, I'm pretty sure, that those oscillations are because of the probably a bad AVC capacitor. So I'll probably pull this one, or I'll probably change both of them, but I'd like to know which one's the AVC capacitor. And because they're near the volume knob, so that's my guess is it's one of them. And I'll probably pull this one down here and change it too. This big one is just a filter for the power is all it is. It just goes straight from 9 volts to ground, and it's just there to filter out any crap coming from the wires to the battery, or help filter out smooth fluctuations from sudden volume changes or something like that. So that one didn't really make too much difference in the operation when I replaced it. But anyway, we'll replace some more caps and we'll check back. Well, I think that pretty much wraps this one up. So ended up replacing all the capacitors. They were all open. I'm not sure what brand. I think they say Singapore on them. But, well, this one's Triumph. Okay, the other ones say Singapore, I think. Well, anyway, they were all bad to some extent. Some worse than others, but they were all open. And then I went ahead and put a new battery clip on it because I have a whole bunch of those. This one just kind of started. It was usable, but yeah, the wires were very crappy on it, and this had started to kind of fray. And yeah, I don't want to. Last thing I want to do is risk a fire over something like that. Not that I would store this with the batteries in it or anything like that. I think that wouldn't be super wise. But yeah, I think that's all that was. It's kind of boring, but I think that's all that was wrong with this radio was just it needed capacitors changed. One of the things that I'm kind of learning as I do this is these old radios, desoldering with solder wick, it really takes a lot of flux. If you just gob the flux on there, you can just suck that solder up with a wick like super easy. And I always use a little bit of flux whenever I'm desoldering. Most of my solder wick experience is with like modern PCBs, but these, there's so much more solder that you have to suck up, so the little pump doesn't, the solder sucker doesn't work too well, because there's just the amount of solder that you have to remove to change any of these components. And then the solder wick does work pretty well, but again, even when you're using high quality solder wick, like I have some MG Chemicals, you go through solder wick really fast, and even with the high quality solder wick, just adding a whole bunch of flux, because those solder joints they're so old, so oxidized, and putting the flux on there is just like magic. But again, it's the trick for me anyway was just kind of finding out that normally I would just kind of put like a little dot, like it's the size of a grain of rice, and it really takes a lot more flux on these to get good results. And so when I got done, I scrubbed the whole back of the circuit board with a brush and some isopropyl alcohol, cleaned the case up and everything, and took a Q-tip and cleaned all the dirt and crud out from on this side of the board. But I believe it's operating pretty well at this point. Some of that noise you're hearing, there's an air conditioner running outside the window behind me, so it's getting some interference from the condenser fan. It's dark, so I'm not sure how many stations it would pick up right now, but it was picking up quite a few stations. And I know that buzzing sound is the air conditioner, because when I walk to the other side of the house with it, away from the air conditioner, that sound goes away. So, but I did find the right schematic for this radio, and it definitely does have 2 IFs.
But I think they're just fine.
And the audio is nice and clear. I checked the IF with the oscilloscope. I checked it earlier with the scope, and it was running at 960, or the converter transistor, the mixer slash oscillator, was running at 962 kilohertz. Well, if you subtract 455, and that was with the tuner all the way down, so that would have been tuned to 540 kilohertz. Well, if you subtract 455 from that, you get 507. And so I thought, well, maybe, and I don't think it's out of alignment because it's performing pretty good, but I was just kind of playing around. And then I got to thinking that maybe the oscillator is not 455 kilohertz, maybe it's 470. But when I checked it, the frequency, like the point where, right around where I thought it went to before the product detector and after the second IF, was kind of hard to tell, because it seemed to have some audio and mixed in it. So that it was kind of bouncing a lot, but it looked like it was right around 530, 550, somewhere in there. So I think, I don't think the radio's out of alignment. I mean, I think this is just, how it performs. And like I said, it's not performing bad. I mean, I think that's pretty acceptable performance. And really just a nice, fun little radio to have worked on. I'm really glad I got to do this project. I got about a dozen more of these to go.